Okay. Broadcast hasn't started yet, I guess. Okay, it says I'm live streaming. Let's start over. Okay. Live streaming now, I think. This is Josh Eaton here, realitycheckradio.net. I guess the president gave a speech today announcing he was going to take executive action regarding gun control. So, since I have to listen to it anyway, it just makes me so angry listening to all his lies and forked tongue speaking. But I have to listen to it anyway, so I figured I would do a commentary and translate his, double speak his lies into English. So here it goes.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Please have a seat. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
If I get a little sarcastic
please have a
during
seat.
my commentary, please understand.
Thank you so much.
Looks emotional.
Mark, I want to thank you for your introduction. I still remember the first time we met, the time we spent together,
He might spend a lot of time
and
hamming it up
the conversation we had about Daniel.
before he gets to the point.
And that changed me that day. And my hope earnestly has been that it would change the country. Now, 5 years ago this week, a sitting member of Congress and 18 others were shot at a supermarket in Tucson, Arizona. It wasn't the first time I had to talk to the nation in response to a mass shooting, nor would it be the last.
He's talking about
Fort Hood,
Gabrielle Giffords.
Binghamton, Aurora, Oak Creek, Newtown, the Navy Yard, Santa Barbara,
His policies are responsible
Charleston,
for half of those.
San Bernardino.
Disarmed our military, can't even carry guns.
Too many. Now, thanks to a great medical team and the love of her husband, Mark, my dear friend and colleague, Gabby Giffords, survived.
Okay, here's a fact about that incident. There was a very conservative judge, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. He was also killed during that incident, and the gunman was, I believe, some kind of Satan worshiper. Okay, but the victims were conservatives and Christians in that incident.
She's here with us today with her wonderful mom.
It's amazing she survived.
This thanks to a great medical team, her wonderful husband, Mark, who, by the way, the last time I met with Mark, this is just a small aside, you may know Mark's twin brother is in outer space. He came to the office.
You know, just real quick, I just want to point out that most of these shooters are on antipsychotic medication and antidepressants, like Prozac and things of that nature.
And I said, how often are you talking to him? He says, well, I usually talk to him every day, but the call was coming in right before the meeting, so I think I may have not answered his call, which made me feel kind of bad.
Some guy in the audience, his twin brothers.
That's a long-distance call. So I told him
Doing a
if his
stand-up
brother Scott
routine.
is calling today, that he should take it. Turn the ringer on. I was there with Gabby when she was still in the hospital. And we didn't think necessarily at that point that she was going to survive.
Now this is called manipulation of mass emotions.
And that visit, right before Memorial, about an hour later, Gabby first opened her eyes.
Who's the first person she saw? Obama.
Now, I
Staring
remember
right
talking
at
to
her.
Mom about that.
Sarcasm.
But I know the pain that she and her family have endured these past 5 years,
If only guns had been
and the
illegal.
rehabilitation, and the work, and the effort to recover from shattering injuries. And then I think of all the Americans who aren't as fortunate. Every single year, more than 30,000 Americans have their lives cut short by guns.
I gotta pause that. I mean, I don't have time to check all kinds of statistics, but I could name so many. How many Americans are killed because they didn't have a gun? Let me put it that way.
30,000. Suicides, domestic violence, gang shootouts, accidents. Hundreds of thousands of Americans have lost brothers and sisters, or buried their own children. Many have had to learn to live with a disability,
It's guns' fault, all of it.
or learn to live without the love of their life.
And
A
by
number of
banning
those people are
guns,
here
everything
today.
will be fine.
They can tell you some stories. In this room right here, there are a lot of stories.
By the way, I just want to mention these Syrian refugees Obama is bringing in. FBI Director James Comey said it's impossible to background check these people. They are ISIS terrorists being chased out of there by Russia. And Obama, under Eric Holder, has also waived a 90-day waiting period for legal immigrants to purchase guns. That's right. So these Syrian refugees that are probably terrorists, I mean 99% likelihood, are going to be able to buy guns. And he wants Americans that have had like a DUI or some crazy wife has called the police on him. He doesn't want those people to have guns, and he's going to do everything he can to make sure nobody gets guns through basically tying them up in a legal system. I have a feeling that's where this is going. Let's continue.
There's a lot of heartache. There's a lot of resilience. There's a lot of strength. But there's also a lot of pain. And this is just a small sampling. The United States of America is not the only country on earth with violent or dangerous people. We are not inherently
We're some of the
more prone
nicest
to
people
violence.
on the planet, most civilized.
But we are the only advanced country on earth that sees this kind of mass violence erupt with this kind of frequency.
That's not true.
It doesn't happen in other advanced countries. It's not even close. And as I've said before, somehow we become numb to it and we start thinking that this is normal.
This is a... Let me pause this. What he's talking about, this is a perception in the media. The media is creating that perception. But the people he's speaking to, his followers, they go off sound bites, basically. They don't know anything. They're so ignorant. Most of them don't even know who that guy on the right is. The vice president couldn't name him without doing a Google search. Joe Biden, but they just take everything he says as truth, and it's not true. The media creates a perception. Let's continue.
And instead of thinking about how to solve the problem, this has become one of our most polarized partisan debates. Despite the fact that there's a general consensus in America about what needs to be done.
That's
part of the reason why on Thursday I'm going to hold a town hall meeting in Virginia on gun violence. Because my goal here is to bring good people on both sides of this issue together for an open discussion. I'm not on the ballot again. I'm not looking to score some points. I think we can disagree without impugning other people's motives or without being disagreeable. We don't need to be talking past one another, but we do have to feel a sense of urgency about it.
Sense of urgency. That means he wants to do things while he's still in office. We have 1 year left with him, and he is going to do everything he can in that time to destroy this country, like he's been doing.
In Dr. King's words, we need to feel the fierce urgency of now. Because people are dying. And the constant excuses for inaction no longer do. No longer suffice. That's why we're here today.
Here's a fun fact. Obama's good rapper friend Jay-Z calls for Donald Trump to be assassinated in a new rap song.
Not to debate the last mass shooting, but to
Of course, no action by the Justice Department to go after him.
do something to try to prevent the next one.
So frustrated listening to all the lies. He rattles them off so fast that you can't even keep up with it.
To prove that the vast majority of Americans, even if our voices aren't always the loudest or most extreme,
Their voices are definitely the loudest and definitely the most extreme.
care enough about a little boy like Daniel to come together and take common sense steps to save lives and protect more of our children.
Yes, do it for the children.
Now, I want to be absolutely clear at the start. I've said this over and over again. This also becomes routine. There's a ritual about this whole thing that I have to do.
Yeah, some 6-8
I believe
ritual maybe.
in the Second Amendment. It's there written on the paper. It guarantees
It's there written on the paper.
a right to bear arms.
What's that, the Bill of Rights?
No matter how many times people try to twist my words around,
Twist them back straight so you can figure
I
out
taught
what you're
constitutional law. I know a little bit about this.
saying. Yep. Taught constitutional law at Columbia University School of Marxism.
I get it. But I also believe that we can find ways to reduce gun violence consistent with the Second Amendment.
He has to know the Constitution so he can
I
dismiss.
mean, think about it. We all believe in the First Amendment, the guarantee of free speech, but we accept that you can't yell
Free
fire
speech zones.
in a theater. We understand there are some constraints on our freedom in order to protect innocent people. We cherish our right to privacy, but we accept that you have to go through metal detectors before being allowed to board a plane. It's not
Yes,
because
we
people
bend
like
over
doing
and
that,
accept it. Jesus.
but we understand that that's part of the price of living in a civilized society.
You must trade your freedom.
And
for
what's
safety.
often ignored in this debate is that a majority of gun owners actually agree.
Oh, where's he
A
getting
majority
that
of gun
statistic?
owners agree that we can respect the Second Amendment while keeping an irresponsible, law-breaking few from inflicting harm on a massive scale.
That's a mouthful right there. I can't even keep up with that.
Today, background checks are required at gun stores. If a father wants to teach his daughter how to hunt, he can walk into a gun store, get a background check, purchase his weapons safely and responsibly. This is not seen as an infringement on the Second Amendment.
Actually, it is.
Contrary to the claims of what some gun rights proponents have suggested, this hasn't been the first step in some slippery slope to mass confiscation.
No.
Contrary to claims of some presidential candidates apparently before this meeting, this is not a plot
Those idiots.
to take away everybody's guns.
Definitely not a plot to take your
You
gun.
pass a background check,
Obama never lies.
you purchase a firearm.
Yes, and if you're on the no-fly list, you can't have one. And, you know, Obama decides who's on the no-fly list.
The problem is some gun sellers have been operating under a different set of rules. A violent felon can buy the exact same weapon over the internet with no background check, no questions asked.
Really? What website is that?
A recent study found that about 1 in 30 people looking to buy guns on one website had criminal records. 1 out of 30 had criminal record.
Maybe they had two
We're talking
DUIs or
about individuals convicted of serious crimes, aggravated assault, domestic violence, robbery, illegal gun possession. People with lengthy criminal histories buying deadly weapons, all too easily. And this was just one website within the span of a few months. So we've created a
So, is it possible to verify these things?
system in which dangerous people are allowed to play by a different set of rules than a responsible gun owner who buys his or her gun the right way and subjects themselves to a background check.
Yes, because criminals always subject themselves to a background check before they buy a gun at their local gun store.
That doesn't make sense. Everybody should have to abide by the same rules. Most Americans and gun owners agree. And that's what we tried to change 3 years ago.
Americans agree the law applies to all of us. Obama's Justice Department believes the laws apply to conservative Americans and Christians and does not apply to the left.
Ago, after 26 Americans, including 20 children, were murdered at Sandy Hook Elementary.
Do it for the children. Manipulation of mass emotions, and you know, if anyone wants to look into the whole Sandy Hook thing, you know, there's all kinds of question marks and issues around that whole thing.
2 United States Senators, Joe Manchin, a Democrat from West Virginia, and Pat Toomey, a Republican from Pennsylvania, both gun owners.
Oh, again, by the way, the Sandy Hook shooter was also into devil worship and things like that, also on mind-altering, antipsychotic medication.
Both strong defenders of our Second Amendment rights, both with A grades from the NRA. That's hard to get. Work together in good faith, consulting with folks like our Vice President, who's been a champion on this for a long time, to write a common sense compromise bill that would have required virtually everyone who buys a gun to get a background check. That was it. Pretty common sense stuff. 90% of Americans supported that idea. 90% of Democrats.
The reason people don't support that, the ones who don't support that, is because when you put this kind of power in the hands of the federal government, you risk the wrong person being in office, aka this guy, and then he has arbitrary power to deny individuals their rights.
Democrats in the Senate voted for that idea. But it failed because 90% of Republicans in the Senate voted against that idea. How did this become such a partisan issue? Republican President George W. Bush once said, I believe in background checks at gun shows or anywhere to make sure that guns don't get into the hands of people that shouldn't have them. Senator John McCain introduced a bipartisan measure to address the gun show loophole.
John McCain, who has photos of himself with ISIS leader Baghdadi, if you Google that one.
Saying we need this amendment because criminals and terrorists have exploited and are exploiting this very obvious loophole in our gun safety laws.
Don't worry, they can get all your criminal friends, Obama, criminal followers can get their guns directly from the Mexican cartels whom you armed.
Even the NRA used to support expanded background checks. And by the way, most of its members still do. Most Republican voters still do. How did we get here? How did we get to the place where people think requiring a comprehensive background check means taking away people's guns?
Because people use logic.
Each time this comes up, we are fed the excuse that common sense reforms like background checks might not have stopped the last massacre, or the one before that, or the one before that. So why?
And by the last massacre, he means the ones reported on television.
Why bother trying? I reject that thinking. We know we can't stop every act of violence, every act of evil in the world. But maybe we could try to stop one act of evil, one act of violence. Some of you may recall at the same time that Sandy Hook happened, a disturbed person in China took a knife and tried to kill with a knife a bunch of children in China. But most of them survived.
Wait a minute. President Obama just said we need more common sense gun policy like communist China that killed 60 million people during the Cultural Revolution, that continues to kill and imprison people for practicing Falun Gong, just like yoga, putting them in prison, taking their organs. Communist China that has 12 to 16-hour workdays, 6 to 7 days a week as the norm. We should be more like communist China and their gun control policy, is what he just said.
He didn't have access to a powerful weapon.
Because the Chinamen who attacked children with a knife didn't have access to a powerful weapon.
We maybe can't save everybody, but we could save some. Just as we don't prevent all traffic accidents, but we take steps to try to reduce traffic accidents. As Ronald Reagan once said, if mandatory background checks could save more lives, it would be well worth making it the law of the land.
Gee, I didn't know cars were designed to kill people.
The bill before Congress 3 years ago met that test. Unfortunately, too many senators failed theirs. In fact, we know that background checks make a difference. After Connecticut passed a law requiring background checks in gun safety courses, gun deaths decreased by 40%. 40%. Meanwhile, since Missouri repealed a law requiring comprehensive background checks and purchase permits, gun deaths have increased to an almost 50% higher than the national average. One study found, unsurprisingly, that criminals in Missouri now have easier access to guns.
He just drops these statistics, so there's no verification.
And the evidence tells us that in states that require background checks, law-abiding Americans don't find it any harder to purchase guns whatsoever. Their guns have not been confiscated, their rights have not been infringed.
Again, what is he citing?
And that's just the information we have access to.
What
With more
information
research,
can I
we
have
can further
access to
improve
it?
gun safety, just as with more research, we've reduced traffic fatalities enormously over the last 30 years. We do research when cars, food, medicine, even toys harm people so that we make them safer.
It wasn't the government that made cars safer, it was the car industries.
And you know what? Research, science, those are good things. They work. They do.
What the scientific method Obama follows.
But think about this. When it comes to an inherently deadly weapon, nobody argues that guns are potentially deadly.
Wait, whoa. Guns are potentially deadly? Yeah, jeez, that's really insightful.
Weapons that kill tens of thousands of Americans every year. Congress actually voted to make it harder for public health experts to conduct research into gun violence. Made it harder to collect data and facts.
Spend an hour unraveling
And develop
that. Can you see how I'm
strategies
getting
to
more and more
reduce
frustrated
gun
with every
violence.
word he says. Whew, George's getting
Even
angry.
after San Bernardino, they've refused to make it harder for terrorist suspects who can't get on a plane to buy semi-automatic weapons.
Okay, San Bernardino, there you go. I gotta pause it here. Wasn't one of them one of the Muslim immigrants that he wants to import more of? They're Muslims. They're Muslims. He refused to call it terrorism. I mean, I can't even... It's so frustrating with this guy. He causes like half the problems he cites.
That's not right.
By the way, these people in California were all disarmed because it's one of the most heavily gun-controlled states in the country. That's why they were slaughtered like animals.
That can't be right. So the gun lobby may be holding Congress hostage right now, but they cannot hold America hostage. We do not have to accept this carnage as the price of freedom.
By the way, the NRA is being targeted by the IRS now for taxes. You know, the IRS had got caught targeting conservatives. Obama's Justice Department a little while ago said that there would be no charges against Lois Lerner, who was caught red-handed with public evidence for all to see. Yeah, they're going after the NRA now with the IRS.
Now, I want to be clear. Congress still needs to act. The folks in this room will not rest until Congress does.
Who are the folks in that room you're talking about?
Because once Congress gets on board with common sense gun safety measures,
Who are the folks in that room?
we can reduce gun violence a whole lot more. But we also can't wait. Until we have a Congress that's in line with the majority of Americans, there are actions within my legal authority that we can take to help reduce gun violence and save more lives.
Okay, so what he just said there is a lie. He's going to take actions that are not in his legal authority, like he has been doing.
Actions that protect our rights and our kids.
Our rights and our kids. Everything he set up so far is leading up to the things he's about to say he's going to do. He's just all been buttering people up. Here it comes. Should be the next couple minutes. Maybe he'll say
After
what
Sandy
he's
Hook,
actually planning to do.
Joe and I worked together with our teams, and we put forward a whole series of executive actions to try to tighten up the existing rules and systems that we had in place. But today we want to take it a step further. So let me outline what we're going to be doing. Number one, anybody in the business of selling firearms must get a license and conduct background checks or be subject to criminal prosecutions.
Okay, well that's the way it is now, so he must mean that anybody who sells a gun must make the person subject to background check, which means ending the private sale.
It doesn't matter whether you're doing it over the internet or at a gun show. It's not where you do it, but what you do. We're also expanding background checks to cover violent criminals who try to buy some of the most dangerous firearms by hiding behind trusts and corporations and various cutouts.
Obama's Syrian refugees who are ISIS will be able to buy anything they want in this country.
We're also taking steps to make the background check system more efficient. Under the guidance of Jim Comey and the FBI and our Deputy Director, Tom Brandon at ATF, we're going to hire more folks to process applications faster, and we're going to bring an outdated background check system into the 21st century.
These Syrian refugees being chased out from
And these steps will actually lead to a smoother process for law-abiding gun owners, a smoother process for responsible gun dealers, a stronger process for protecting the people from the public from dangerous people.
Well,
so that's number one.
So it must be true.
Number two, we're going to do everything we can to ensure the smart and effective enforcement of gun safety laws that are already on the books, which means we're going to add 200 more ATF agents and investigators. We're going to require firearms dealers to report more lost or stolen guns.
This administration has used the ATF to basically let guns be sold to Mexican cartels
on a timely basis. We're working with advocates to protect victims of domestic abuse from gun violence, where too often...
Okay, that means that he's working on a local level to make it so that any woman, any emotionally charged woman can make a phone call at any time to have a man's guns taken away, is what that comes down to. Any panicky, mom, wife, girlfriend, daughter can make one call to have a man's guns taken away. That's what he meant by that one.
Where too often people are not getting the protection that they need. Number three, we're going to do more to help those suffering from mental illness get the help that they need.
Probably means restricting gun sales to anybody on the different medication they've been pushing at people.
So, high-profile mass shootings tend to shine a light on those few mentally unstable people who inflict harm on others, but the truth is that...
And the ones he chooses to ignore and go after the guns instead, your guns that you use to defend against criminals with guns.
Nearly 2 in 3 gun deaths are from suicides.
Nearly 2 out of 3 suicide deaths are from guns. Well, yeah, ban guns, so they have to find another way to kill themselves, I guess. There's some logic for you.
So a lot of our work is to prevent people from hurting themselves. That's why we made sure that the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, finally, that law made sure that treatment for mental health was covered the same as treatment for any other illness.
Okay.
That's why we're going to invest $500 million to expand access to treatment across the country.
So we need more psychologists and drug pushers.
It's also why we're going to ensure that federal mental health records are submitted to the background check system and remove barriers that prevent states from reporting relevant information. If we can continue to destigmatize mental health issues, get folks proper care, and fill gaps in the background check system, then we can spare more families the pain of losing a loved one to suicide.
And that's definitely a very nice way of saying that they're going to deny anybody on medication access to buying guns, which I think, they definitely ought to outlaw these antidepressant medications like Prozac and the things that followed.
And for those in Congress who so
we never used to have these problems until Prozac came out, those of you who remember back in the 80s, 90s.
often rush to blame mental illness for mass shootings as a way of avoiding action on guns, here's your chance to support these efforts. Put your money where your mouth is. Number 4, we're going to boost gun safety technology. Now, today, many gun injuries and deaths are the result of legal guns that were stolen or misused or discharged accidentally. In 2013 alone, more than 500 people lost their lives to gun accidents, and that includes 30 children younger than 5 years old.
Support the NRA's Eddie Eagle program to teach children safety when it comes to guns.
Now, in the greatest, most technologically advanced nation on earth, there is no reason for this. We need to develop new technologies that make guns safer. If we can set it up so you can't unlock your phone unless you got the right fingerprint, why can't we do the same thing for our guns?
And here's the thing, they just want to tie people up in regulations, all kinds of regulations. The more complicated, the more regulations, the more people won't even bother. And the more chance somebody has of tripping up and accidentally breaking one of these minor laws and giving an Obama Justice Department or a Democrat Justice Department, a lawless Justice Department, let's just say that, give them an opportunity to imprison a good American over a, mistake. And not just imprison them, but to tie them up in legal processes, court processes, paying for lawyers, things like that. That's what it's about. It's about choking people out with over-regulation.
If there's an app that can help us find a missing tablet, which happens to me often, the older I get. If we can do it for your iPad, there's no reason we can't do it with a stolen gun.
He's talking about putting a tracking device on every gun.
If a child can't open a bottle of aspirin, we should make sure that they can't pull a trigger on a gun.
Or make it so that an adult does not get their gun operational in a timely way, so they can't defend themselves.
All right? So we're going to advance research. We're going to work with the private sector to update firearms technology. And some gun retailers are already stepping up by refusing to finalize a purchase without a complete background check, or by refraining from selling semi-automatic weapons or high-capacity magazines. And I hope that more retailers and more manufacturers join them, because they should care as much as anybody about a product that now kills almost as many Americans as car accidents.
I guess that's pretty good for a product that's designed to kill, right?
I make this point because none of us can do this alone. I think Mark made that point earlier. All of us should be able to work together to find a balance that declares the rest of our rights are also important. Second Amendment rights are important, but there are other rights that we care about as well.
What rights are those?
And we have to be able to balance them.
What rights are those?
Because our right to worship freely and safely, that right was denied to Christians in Charleston South Carolina.
Notice how almost all the time in these mass shootings, the victims are almost always Christian. Just an observation.
And that was denied Jews in Kansas City. And that was denied Muslims in Chapel Hill. And
okay, he's just invoked the rights of Muslims to worship freely, because we all know in Muslim countries how many rights non-Muslims have to worship freely. And then after they worship something that's not Muslim, they get their heads cut off.
Sikhs in Oak Creek, they had rights too.
Muslims in the United States have rights, is what he just said, over the rights of Americans to own firearms. That's what I get out of that.
Our right to peaceful assembly. That right was robbed from moviegoers in Aurora and Lafayette.
Twisting things.
Our unalienable right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, those rights were stripped from college kids in Blacksburg and Santa Barbara.
He's trying to strip your right to life by taking away the means to defend yourself.
And from high schoolers at Columbine. And from first graders in Newtown.
Yep, the children, manipulation of mass emotions again.
First graders.
Isn't he supposed to tear up during this interview at some point, or this speech?
And from every family who never imagined that their loved one would be taken from our lives by a bullet from a gun.
Oh, here he goes. Oh.
Every
Like
time
an
I
actor,
think
you know?
about those kids,
Like an act.
it gets me mad. And by the way, it happens on the streets of Chicago every day.
A city with the highest gun control in the nation. A city where he's from, the most crooked and corrupt.
So, all of us need to demand a Congress brave enough to stand up to the gun lobby's lies. All of us need to stand up and protect its citizens. All of us need to demand governors and legislators and businesses do their part to make our communities safer.
And if they don't, burn that shit down.
We need the wide majority of responsible gun owners who grieve with us every time this happens and feel like your views are not being properly represented to join with us to demand something better.
If I see him insensitive, it's because guns save lives. Guns save lives. Guns in the right hand save lives. He wants to take them out of the right hands.
And we need voters who want safer gun laws and who are disappointed in leaders who stand in their way to remember come election time. I mean, some of this is just simple math. Yes, the gun lobby is loud and it is organized in defense of making it effortless for guns to be available for anybody, anytime. Well, you know what? The rest of us, we all have to be just as passionate. We have to be just as organized in defense of our kids. This is not that complicated.
The reason they're not is because when people start looking into the issue, they understand what he's saying isn't true. That's why the anti-gun lobby doesn't gain any steam.
The reason Congress blocks laws is because they want to win elections. And if you make it hard for them to win an election, if they block those laws, they'll change course, I promise you. And yes, it will be hard. And it won't happen overnight. It won't happen during this Congress. It won't happen during my presidency.
That was an interesting remark.
But a lot of things don't happen overnight. A woman's right to vote didn't happen overnight.
Women's right to vote.
The liberation of African Americans didn't happen overnight.
So this is like
LGBT
giving
rights.
to people.
That was
Taking our rights
decades
away.
worth of work. So just because it's hard, that's no excuse not to try. And if you have any doubt as to why you should feel that fierce urgency of now, think about what happened 3 weeks ago. Xavion Dobson was a sophomore at Fulton High School in Knoxville, Tennessee.
He's just completely gearing people up emotionally.
He played football, beloved by his classmates and his teachers. His own mayor called him one of their city's success stories.
Before or
The
after?
week before Christmas, he headed to a friend's house to play video games. He wasn't in the wrong place at the wrong time. He hadn't made a bad decision. He was exactly where any other kid would be. Your kid. My kids. And then gunmen started firing. And Xavion, who was in high school, hadn't even gotten started in life, dove on top of 3 girls to shield them from the bullets.
A lot of details missing from this
And he was
story.
shot in the head. And the girls were spared. He gave his life to save theirs.
Yeah, too bad he didn't have a gun.
An act of heroism a lot bigger than anything we should ever expect from a 15-year-old.
Oh, he's 15. Well, still. I guess other 15-year-old criminals have guns.
Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. We are not asked to do what Xavion Dobson did. We're not asked to have shoulders that big, a heart that strong, reactions that quick. I'm not asking people to have that same level of courage or sacrifice or love. But if we love our kids and care about their prospects, and if we love this country and care
If we love our kids, we need to ban guns.
about its future, then we can find the courage to vote. We can find the courage to get mobilized and organized. We can find the courage to cut through all the noise and do what a sensible country would do.
Let's do what a sensible country would do.
That's what we're doing today.
Sensible countries like Europe, they ban guns from citizens, and on the other hand, they let dangerous Muslim people move in freely. And, you know, they have guns. They have guns in France. They're getting AK-47s up through Spain and across up through northern Africa, up that way. That's what sensible countries do.
Tomorrow we should do more, and we should do more the day after that. And if we do, we'll leave behind a nation that's stronger than the one we inherited and worthy of the sacrifice of a young man like Xavion. Thank you very much, everybody. God bless you. Thank you.
It's so frustrating. Okay, I guess that's it. Well, thanks for watching, and I'm going to do another video about how Obama is basically importing these ISIS terrorists in and allowing them to buy guns while at the same time he's trying to take guns out of the hands of Americans. Thanks for watching. Subscribe.